please explain daylight saving time? I can't.
No worries, I got you, Neil. So now, daylight savings time. What is daylight savings time? Daylight savings time is just the optimization of daylight. Okay? So there's a big debate whether we should adopt just to get rid of this whole changing thing, because the change bothers a lot of people. So there's a debate whether do we keep daylight savings time or do we keep standard time? Now, right now we are in October, okay? So we are coming to the end of daylight savings time because daylight savings starts on March 10th and ends November 3rd. So once we get to November 3rd, we switch back from daylight savings time to standard time, okay? Now, what I have done here is chose the 15th of every month just as an example. Now, your sunrise and sunset times will differ than mine depending where you live. I live in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Wherever you live, if you live in Canada, your times are going to be very similar to mine, but it'll be within, 20 minutes or so of the sunrise and sunset times, depending on your longitude and your latitude, right? Because we all know daylight savings time is the amount of sunlight we get, and that changes. And so daylight savings, this isn't a thing for anybody who lives near the equator because they don't really get affected as much by the Earth's axis because the Earth is tilted, right? So that's why we have seasons. So when we orbit around the sun, depending where we are for our daily rotation, right, to give us night and day, that changes the amount of night and day time. Okay, so daylight savings time, it was talked about back in the 1700s by Benjamin Franklin, of all people. Very intelligent people came up with the solution. Okay, people argue, oh, daylight savings time is stupid. Daylight savings time is not stupid. Okay, there's a reason why we all do this. Okay, and because it's been so long since we needed to come up with a solution, people tend to forget that this was a problem and this is the solution. So I'm just here to remind you why we have daylight savings time. Okay, so we're going to look at the summer months, okay? Because this is what daylight savings time does. With daylight savings time on July 15th, the sunrise was at 5:29 a.m. The sun set at 8:47 p.m. Okay? So 5:30 in the morning, your sun's coming up. Almost 9 o'clock at night, your sun's finally going down. Okay? If we didn't have daylight savings time, the sun would be rising at 4:29 in the morning. We don't need sun that early. Okay, because we got to understand what's the point of sunlight, okay? It's to have light so we can see and do things outside, okay? Like driving to work in the morning or going to school, right? All of these things, daylight increases safety, right? We can see what we're doing, okay? So that's why that's not a big concern in the summer because as you see here, in June, we have 15 hours and 18 minutes of daylight, okay? These are all the amount of daylight. As you can see, come the winter time, right, we have almost half the amount of daylight that we did in the summer. So we need to use our daylight wisely. And it's not wise to be using look at June 15th, 4:13 in the morning. Why do you need the sun to rise at 4:13 in the morning? You don't. So let's just kick it up to 5:13 in the morning, still very early. And instead of the sun setting now at 7:53, the sun's going to set at 8:53, which gives this is the best time of the year, right? It's after dinner time. You're trying to relax, enjoy the weather outside, the sun's setting down. It's a hot, beautiful day. Now it's just starting to cool off that the sun went down. That's the best time of year, especially in Canada. You're out by a lake, you're just by a bonfire. That's when that matters. So we get more of that valuable connection time with friends, with family, that time after dinner to connect outside. We get an extra hour of that. And that's the most important time of the year. That's the greatest value time of the year. Because that's when, you go out, play a game of cornhole, you play some horseshoes, you do outdoor activities, you go for a boat ride. All those things are made possible because of daylight savings. If we decide to get rid of daylight savings, your day gets cut shorter 1 hour in the summer when it means the most to you. Instead, they're giving it to you in the morning. Well, who cares that the sun's rising at 4:13 in the morning? Everybody's sleeping. Very few people get up and work that early, right? Don't get me wrong, there are people, but 5:13 is a suitable sunrise time. Okay, so that's why we have daylight savings time. So now you might be saying, okay, let's just adopt daylight savings time. This is where it gets a little tricky. Okay, so if we want to keep standard time, or keep daylight savings time year round, so in November, instead of it being 7:02, it would now be 8:02 on November 15th. And then in December, the sun, instead of rising at 7:36, it's not going to rise until 8:36. Some of you guys are about to be taking your first break at work. Meanwhile, the sun's just starting to come up. That's ridiculous. Kids are going to be at school already. 8:36, that's just too late for a sunrise. So that's why we have standard time, 7:36, because the sun sets at 4:20 p.m. So we can kick that to 5:20, but think about it. At 4:20 and 5:20, what's the difference? 5:20 is still a little early to go to bed, right? So you just get that extra hour of sunlight in the afternoon that you're not really using. It's dinner time. You're going to be eating dinner. It's cold. You're inside anyways. Turn the lights on, right? But in the morning, when you're driving to work, you're going to be driving in the dark. Kids are going to school in the dark. It's just not safe. So to have standard time not happen and just to adopt daylight savings time all year round, it's too dangerous, right? In the mornings, like January, look at this, 8:39 is the sunrise. The sun's not coming up until 8:39. That's way too late. That's why standard time, 7:39. Okay, you don't need the extra hour in the evening. You really don't, because you only have so much. You only have 9 hours of daylight. 9 hours, that's 8-hour workday for a lot of people. Plus your half-hour travel back. So your entire time at work is spent going to and from work is in that 9 hours. Okay, in order to suit most people, we have 7:39 to 4:45. That accommodates most people the best. If you want to go to 8:39 to 5:45, that's only benefiting people who are starting work really late and ending a little bit late. And it's not even benefiting them. So that's why it just doesn't make sense to have standard time. So, but if we optimize standard time in the summer, our sun's setting way too early and we're wasting daylight. 4:13 in the morning, why are you awake? Right? Everybody would much rather have that extra hour from 4:13 to 5:13 in the morning. If that's dark, that gives us 7:53 to 8:53 at night to enjoy the daylight when people are still awake. If you have young kids, you can put them to bed and still have a little bit of daylight out. As opposed to, if we adopt standard time, you don't get any daylight. You can't put the kids to bed and go sit outside for an hour and enjoy your hours, have a glass of wine, have a whatever, and enjoy the sunset. You can't do that because we have robbed that extra hour of daylight. That's why daylight savings time is so important. So what we have to decide as a society is these 2 days, November 3rd and March 10th. Are we willing to sacrifice 1 hour of a little disruption on these 2 days out of 365? Okay? Are we willing to make that sacrifice on those 2 days to give us optimal daylight throughout the year? If the answer to that is no, we do not want to have the time change. We just want to keep the same. Well, then we're going to be having to make another sacrifice. Do we want to have 238 days of daylight savings time, which is great? but then we suffer the 127 days of being robbed an hour? Or the other way, where we keep standard time and we have 127 days that are pretty good, but then 238 days where we're wasting an hour of sunlight in the morning instead of using it in the afternoon. That's what we need to decide and discuss as a society. I think it's nonsense. There's way bigger problems we have in this world than daylight savings time. Daylight savings time was already solved for us. There are plenty of other problems that we need to be solving. Daylight savings time is not one of them. It's been solved. Look at this. This is a work of art, okay? They did the math to determine the best times so we get the most amount of daylight. And that's what it is. So that's why we shouldn't do anything and just leave daylight savings time and standard time the way it is and keep changing the times twice a year because it's the best thing for everybody.